Hi everybody. Yesterday afternoon I put a power head and an air stone in my 55-gallon tank. I used to have a power head in here but no air stone, and the power head broke, and I really started to experience a lot of cyanobacteria growth, and the overall conditions in the tank just really started deteriorating once I lost all that additional circulation. So I put the power head in, and then I also installed the air stone just for good measure, because I'm finding that adding an air stone to your tank is a really simple way of increasing the quality of the conditions in the tank. The only problem is that air stone is really vigorous. The pump is set up for anywhere from a 40 to a 60-gallon tank, or so it says, and yet we're getting that much air blowing out of only one of the two ports on it. It's a dual port, so I could run two air lines off of it. And if you're not familiar with these dual port air hoses, and you can see here it's got the one hose coming out of there, but it's got the other little spot for the line in that. This actually has two completely separate air pumps in it, and each pump goes to its own line. So while the one pump on the left there is just pumping away and blowing air out into the room, it has absolutely no effect or impact on the volume of air coming through that hose. So that is quite literally half of the volume of what this pump is able to produce. I could hook that other line up and I could have two stones like that going in this tank at the same time. So that's an awful lot of air stone, and the way I'm currently using it, I'm wasting half the capacity of the pump. On the other hand, if we come over here and we look at my 125-gallon New World tank, you can see that this is a big tank. It's 125 gallons, as I just said. And I don't have a whole lot of air going on in this tank at all. I have one measly little air stone over here that is producing that much in the way of bubbles at the surface. So that is partially because it's an old air stone and I really should be cleaning it out at this point. It's also fairly deep underwater, and the deeper you put it underwater, the more pressure it has to push through, so that'll reduce the amount of airflow on some of these smaller pumps. But either way you slice it, what we're going to do is take this pump, put a new stone on it, move it over into the 55, and then we are going to take this pump that is currently on the 55, and we're going to move that over to the 125, and we're going to see what we can do. I went to the Wally World last night and I bought a bunch of backflow check valves. I bought some air stones and some larger air line. So let me get all this put together and we will see what the end result is here on the other side of this video. Alright, I think we have come out to a reasonably satisfactory outcome. And I say reasonably because I was unable to get the backflow check valve to work on this one. The pump simply does not put enough pressure. These little check valves have so much resistance to them that the pump will only pump air through it at very shallow depths. By the time you get down anywhere near where the power head is, there's pretty much no air coming out of the air pump or out of the air stone at all anymore. And so I had to run this one without any kind of backup safety. So we may have to get a different pump. I may have to build a little shelf on the wall up here. Another way you can avoid that is if you put the air pump above the tank, you won't get any siphon effect if the pump shuts down. So I do have other options, but that pump is simply not powerful enough to push through that valve and then still push through all that water pressure and give me any kind of consistent bubbles. So that's where we're going to leave it. I did wind up just putting a little suction cup on the air line. Used a little piece of metal garden tie to twist it on there, and then I was able to suction cup the air stone to the back right behind the power head. Enough of the bubbles. There you go. You get a little good look at the occasional blast of bubbles that get caught in it and a few little micro bubbles coming out of it. So that is perfect. That's going to give me great circulation, and it's going to give me fantastic aeration in this tank without overdoing it. Moving over to my 125-gallon tank, I was able to do the same thing in the back here. This is likewise suction cup stuck to the back, and I put it in such a place where you just can't really see the air stone itself. You just see some bubbles coming up in the back of the tank. I did experiment around a little bit. I did try putting the air stone in and under that log and have the bubbles come up through the log. You don't realize how many of these openings are actual openings. Those are holes right through the log, and with the air stone down here, I was getting bubbles coming up all through the log, and that was pretty interesting, but I didn't think it was tenable. I figured the fish would knock into it, and the air stone just wouldn't stay in there. It didn't look right, and so I wound up going with the idea of just using the little twisty metal garden tie and the suction cup, and we stuck that one to the back. So that is the one that is just shaped like a regular old air stone. And on this end, I've got one of those little 4-inch air stones. It's a little bar, and I have that underneath of that rock, and it's actually buried underneath of a little bit of that gravel too. So again, we can't really see the air stone, but we see the bubbles coming up, and of course they're rising up right into the power head there, and that's going to give us lots of little bubble distribution through the water and good aeration and everything. So this tank now has more bubbles at this end, and we've got a good vigorous stream of bubbles at that end. So this tank is going to be better off by making that switch, and of course my 55-gallon looks a lot better now that we've made that switch. So I'm coming down the home stretch now. Almost all of my tanks now have a combination of an air stone in the corner with a power head moving the aerated water around. This one likewise, and we will need to do that on my gourami tank here at some point in the future. This tank here, I do have a small power head, an 80-gallon per hour power head that I'm not using right now, and I think I'm going to add that to this tank. This tank has ticked over like a clock for so many years now. I'm afraid to do anything to it, but we will have to wait and see. I definitely feel like I want to get a secondary source of circulation in here. So a very small air pump with a small air stone, and then that little 80-gallon per hour power head should probably do okay in this tank. So we'll have to wait and see. So there you go, everybody. We're going to end this one on a little look at my 29 miscellaneous here. I'm going to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the updates on any of the tanks I've already mentioned or anything else I've got going on. And don't forget, of course, I do live streams every Friday and Sunday night. So thanks for watching. See you real soon in the next one.